Vincent and Derrick. How are y'all?
Pretty good.
Good, good. How are you?
Gotta say this. First of all, they are in the same room. It looks like y'all.
Yes, this is real.
We got to get all up in y'all business. So we got to start with the question that everybody wants to know, and that is, how long have y'all been together, and how did y'all first meet?
We met in March of 2018 at housewarming for someone, and uh, it was a Friday evening. I remember that because I had gotten off of work and I had not planned to go. Honestly, I had not planned to go to this housewarming, and but they were serving wings. So
Okay.
I'm a big wing, and they actually there's a text that says we got wings. I said okay, so I'm gonna stop by, and I came into the house, and a lot of people there I knew, but there was one person there at the time I didn't know, which was Vincent, and we met, but we had never seen each other. We had never come across each other, but we knew apparently the same people. And while we were waiting, because even though when I got there, a little bit after time, the wings were not ready yet.
Oh, hell
So
no.
nope, that's it. That's how it always goes. So and I waited, and so to pass the time, I decided to get a little mimosa, I guess, or open up uh, a Freshenet, a white Freshenet bottle, but I was struggling. And Vincent, who works in the wine and beverage industry, he offered to help me, and I said, I know how to open.
I don't know.
Wine, and I did not. So apparently, I was still struggling. I was still trying to get it open without having to pop off and it just do so. He did assist, and he been helping me ever since, I guess. He did assist, and that's kind of that's when it started that I looked at him. He was in passing before, but then I said. And so later on, as the evening went on, and I had some more Fregenet, white ice Fregenet, he walked past me at one good time, and I just pulled him in, and we started talking at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was interesting because uh someone who works in the alcohol industry, I was like, oh, okay, like, oh, he's cute. And then I'm like, let me just open this here. And so I was glad that I was able to catch his attention. Um, and yeah, and it's like after that, like, some time passed, and then we connected via Facebook. Um, and it was like, hey, I have this nonprofit, and it'd be great if you could consider joining. And so, I joined the organization. And then a few weeks later after that, he was like, hey, we're having a potluck at my house for the nonprofit. So I'd already became a member. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, first event, like, sure. So went by there, and then we've been together ever since that night.
Right.
And so that was over 6 years ago. And April 21st,
Right.
which is such a profound day because we learned stuff later on in our relationship about that day, but about the actual like physical day, not the but yeah, it was a really just, it was meant to be, like you said, with us like coming across some of the same people and like not meeting each other. And yeah, it was just amazing that we connected that night, and then connected again on April 21st. And then yeah.
And the important part of that too is so he came over, this was again a LGBTQ potluck, so group, especially heavy on the G. Yeah, right, big man. But so everybody had been drinking, and they're doing their thing. So most people had called Ubers. Vincent, who lived far away at the time, he drove and he couldn't make it home. I didn't feel comfortable. So he stayed over, but he stayed in the guest room, right? Totally separate, own, restroom, everything like that. And in the morning, I was gonna go to church because I always go to church. And
Yeah.
then we ended up talking from I woke him up around 10 something because I needed to get to church for about 11:30, I think at the time. I think that's when service was starting.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking. And then by the time I looked up, it's almost 5 p.m. Yeah. So I don't know what happened. That's the first time I missed church in maybe 7 years. Because even when I would go out of town, yeah, that's how crazy it was. Even when I would go out of town, I might find a church to go to. That was part of the journey. And when I missed church, I said, "Oh my God!" And then what else hadn't happened? We hadn't eaten.
Mm-hmm.
We had not eaten. So we at a certain point we just looked and said, "Oh my God, it's almost 5 p.m. on a Sunday. We have not eaten." So we went to a diner and we ate there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like our official first date in a way, because we were just, he and I just hammering down food because we end up being starving. But the talk before that was amazing. And that's kind of what led to the ongoing relationship we have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got to ask Vincent. So since y'all first met, how many more bottles have you opened up for Derrick?
There's been a few. There's been a few.
What were your experiences like in other relationships? And if you had them, how did they prepare you for meeting each other?
I had interactions with people that, like I did have I now call it like a situationship,
Okay.
for like 2 years. It was like 2.5 years, something like that. And for me, it was really just trying to figure out like what I actually wanted in a relationship. And, this person, they used to live in the area and then they lived outside of the area. And there was times where I would travel to visit them, but there was a bigger age gap between me and that person. And it's like, this isn't someone that I could see like introducing my mother to. Because all my intimate relationships that I hadn't introduced, and I didn't have a lot. And I just want to clarify that too. But the people that I had met, it was never like, ooh, this is someone that I want to bring home to my family to like, that I'm proud of. This is like someone that I'm exploring internally. Like, is this something that works for me? Because I was also I came out when I was 20. Yeah, it was the summer of 2011. So that was when I came out to my mom and everything. And so at that point, I hadn't had any intimate partners at that time. And so figuring things out, it was just later that I discovered that, I did want something of substance, but I couldn't find it before I met Derrick. And so, yeah, it was just a weird, when I wouldn't say weird is not the right word, but it was just a different time of like those stages of, figuring out like, what does this look like? What does that look like? And is this something that I can work with? And most of the time it wasn't. And then also an important data point for before Derrick and I met, that same year, my great grandmother had passed away. And I had went through like a period of depression, and because I had grew up with her, living in the house with her, and I was fortunate that I had 27 years of my life with her, and she lived to be 98. And
Wow.
so, yeah, praise God. And so, all those things kind of factored in of like Derrick and I not knowing the same people. Well, knowing the same people, sorry, knowing the same people, but not seeing each other until I guess it was divine when we were both supposed to be ready. And so then I'll let
Well, so I came out later. So before moving to the area, I was a middle school teacher, and I dated women. I was engaged to one, right? So I was like in a 4-year relationship with her. And after that, I, was also, I wasn't, and when I say I wasn't out to me. Like I wasn't even, it was something that I knew something was different. So when things began to get serious with her to the point that I said, you know what, this is not going to go well because the walls are closing in. So I ended up unfortunately ghosting her after almost 4 years. Because at that point we lived in different towns, and because I didn't have the words to say, but I knew this wasn't right.
I was about to say, you know, you was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I never would want that. But I didn't have the words at the time because mentally, and especially romantically, I was a kid. Like I just wasn't, there was something there that, was not in line with me marrying a woman. And I ended up moving to the DMV for law school. And this is where I needed to be because I didn't move here because of the LGBTQ community, but I also realized when I got here, this is the first area that normalized that made me feel normal, that made me feel comfortable. So I came out here to two of my one of my law school colleagues, and I actually came out to her and her now wife on their second date. And it was October 2013. And when I came out to her, now I said, now what do we do? What do we do? So over that time, I dated a lot. I met some friends. And I will say this, because all we had, Sampson, were movies and web series, right? Written materials that were given us. We have no there's no gay blueprint for most of us growing up. Right. There's no gay couple that we could go to, look to. So going through that, I dated and kept dating. And I will say that God gave me everyone I ever prayed for. And I said, every time I got him, I said, oh God, take it back. Like that. And that's because I didn't know what I want. I didn't know what I wanted. Like, what do we know about what we want or really what we need? We'll make up a top 10 list quickly. And then when we get it, it's not what we need. And because the things we want, many of those things are superficial, fade away. And by the third, fourth date, or even the first month, something's up. And so I went into, like Vince, many situationships, right? That, it was like, it seemed like a relationship, but, in all honesty, it could drop at a drop of a dime, and it did. A lot of them did. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting a relationship coach in 2017, Amari Ice. And he had just started the business. I entered it, and it was needed because I needed to not only reconcile me being gay, but what that meant, right? What that entailed, what you're looking for in a partner. Because if I grew up Southern Baptist, being a Southern gentleman, opening doors, paying. Well, what does that mean? Because if that's for a woman, what do you do with a man? You don't just cookie cutter and say, I'm gonna open the door for you. How does that make him feel, right? So that was stuff I had to learn. That's 2017. And so then I start the nonprofit around the end of that year, and we host a program called Gay Love in Color, which was about providing a blueprint. And we had seasoned couples on the stage, and Amari hosted, as well as Bishop Cheeks from the area, Rainy Cheeks. And it was a huge turnout because so many, and we were new. We were brand new. This was February 2018. The organization started January 2018. We're brand new, and we had over 120 people come. And because people were like, yeah, we're looking for, like, what is this? And so I hosted that in February. Then Valentine's Day hits, but I'm alone. And I'm like, so I'm in depression, right? And so it's like, you get to March, you can see why, we were getting prepared, I guess, to meet each other. Mm-hmm. And I had done a social media fast. I think he had done a social media fast. Yeah, that's both of it, and separately, just out of no reason. Yeah. And then we meet, and so that was the foundation.
Dealing with those backgrounds, how were you both able to come to terms with your sexuality?
What's interesting is when I was in college, I went to a school out in Ohio, small university, not affiliated with OSU, but it was a small technical school. And out there, I actually saw a roommate of mine, he got bullied for being gay.
Mm.
And so at that time, I was really in a conundrum because I wasn't out, but I felt for him. And being a witness to that firsthand, like really made it challenging for me to like to sit indefinitely and not either defend him or find a way to support him. And so our roommates at the time, he was bullied, and then we ended up changing dorms, and he was living somewhere where he was safer. And then he started dating a guy on campus, and then they started a group called the Gay Straight Alliance. And that was the first that our school had ever had something like that. In this small little, I don't want to say hick town, but it was a really small town called Lima. Lost in Middle America was the running joke. And yeah, so it was like in that school, and seeing that we had a lesbian teacher who was our sponsor. So she would be the one who would like organize the spaces where we could go and feel comfortable. And we had like 7 or 8 people that actually showed up, and we had flyers all over campus of like who's gonna come. And it's like that's also like a nerve-wracking thing because you're like, if I come, I'm outing myself, right? So, but at the same time, like the 7 or 8 of us were looking for community, and we started creating that. So then we started like watching movies and like just hanging out and doing things together. And that was like I felt normal, like Derrick was saying. And so that gave me the courage to then I graduated. Well, my last class was in December of 2010, and then I graduated in June or July of 2011, and that was when I was in Ohio for the graduation. My mom and I, we had that conversation. We were in a TJ Maxx, and they have like the little display furniture. And we sat right on that chair, and we said we just gonna talk about this.
Right in TJ Maxx.
Right in TJ Maxx, and Grandma was there too. And that was the funny part. Grandma was like, "I'm gonna just go and shop. I'm gonna just let my grandson and my daughter talk." And so she was like, "I love you. Like you're my son. Like I love you." And I'm an only child, so that was also like a thing. That I'm sure that And she just was like, I could come to her, but then we didn't really talk much about it for years after that. It was kind of like it was a big climaxing moment for us to do that. And then, and it wasn't that there wasn't support there, because I also want to make sure that that's clear. She still loved me and still supported me, but we didn't have the language or the words to navigate that. It was all new for us. So that sort of thing set my foundation for figuring out like who I am, because I saw someone who couldn't defend themselves and then was targeted essentially. And there's a whole separate story about how that came to be. And then like me feeling like, you know what, like I need to embrace myself. And the fact that I was able to find that community, in the school. And this school, we have maybe like 1,500 kids. And it was a Latino guy, and the rest were white, as far as those 7 or 8 people who came out that day. So it was really a turning point for me. And I also am a firm believer that like if I hadn't moved away to go to school and like had that space to grow and develop and those sorts of things, I never would have, like, at least the way that my journey is now, I never would have been able to do it. Because in this area, you really do think that it's just the way that the rest of America is. And then when you go and you step out to another area, it's like they're not as friendly for queer people, gay people, all those sorts of things. It's like you really can see some places they'll look at you and like, what's going on over here? And so, yeah, that's been my journey.
Well, so because I was Southern Baptist, I had baggage, right? There was no, we heard the sermon, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. We heard all the jokes. One year, my pastor in college said we're having annual couples retreat, and he said, and I never thought I had to say this, but male and female couples only. You know, he said that, bless his heart and rest his soul. And, so that's what I was coming against. So hence all of my time, first 30 years or so of life, I played the game of like not even telling myself, not even admitting to myself. So when I came up here, and like I said, I got to law school and I came out to my friends in law school, and I also joined the group Outlaw. And so my friend the same friend I came out to, she had just become president and revigorated this. And this is at a HBCU. So that's important to know because it was the few, right? It wasn't, a lot, it was the HBCU, and they had some growing pains to do as well, definitely. But my coming out then was gradual, right? So I was definitely not out on social media, definitely not out to my parents. And over time, I began to feel more and more comfortable. And I found a church that was growing as well in Virginia. And, it's not necessarily an affirming church as in, the rainbow is everywhere at the time, but, the ministry was very biblically based. It was welcoming. And it may not be, but it was welcoming. And that's why I felt more at home. And I began to connect my spirituality with my gayness, my queerness. And I saw that there was no disconnect there. And this church did a Saturday morning teaching, I think it even went viral, on sexuality and the Bible. And this woman came in, PhD, amazing, and she began to kind of break down a lot of the biblical stories that people would use, right? So when you talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, right, and hence you get sodomy, but the deal was Sodom and Gomorrah was not about a group of people, cities that were gay and God was wiping them out, right? There was wickedry in every sense, right? And the story, the way she broke it down, it's like, if you accept the story as just being anti-gay, then you're anti-woman, because in that story, the biblical person Lot, when they want to sleep with the male angels, Lot says, "Don't sleep with these angels who are men of God. Take my daughters instead." So we're just throwing away his daughters. So it put people in a conundrum. It said, you never thought about it like that. You just accepted the fact that this man was going to give away his daughter, and because it was like so many people were just conflicted, right? There was only one person the Bible says David loved, and that was Jonathan. Loved them more than a brother, right? There was only one. So you begin to kind of think about these type of things. So for me and my mom, she wasn't in the area. We hadn't, I went through Hurricane Katrina. I'm from New Orleans. So, we had some distance, and there was just it was Thanksgiving Day, 2015. So like 2-3 years later, she saw a picture I posted, and I was next to a nice looking young lady. But it was a group picture, but I was sitting next to her, and she called and she said, "Oh, who's that lady next to you?" I said, "That's my friend Brian's wife." I said, "Mama, there's never going to be a girl." And I pulled over in a Walgreens parking lot on Thanksgiving Day 2015, and I just broke it down. I said, "There's never going to be a girl. I know you met the other lady who was there for a while, but clearly no, that didn't work out. That worked out because of this. That didn't work out because of this. This was the reason. I still love God. I'm still, a man. You got to tell Southern mothers this. I'm still all that. There's just one thing different. The person I bring home will not be a woman." And, and one of the reasons I'm glad I did that is because then I give her a moment to, grieve her thoughts, and because she's going to be coming out too, essentially, as my mother. She's now going to have to reevaluate what she believed my future was going to look like. And, so I'm glad I wasn't outed. Like I didn't, I had friends who had that happen, and their parents didn't get a chance to come out with them, essentially. And I think that was a big part of the journey. And again, having a church that's welcoming and that's teaching, biblical faith-based materials, that's not just, cliches and anecdotes, right? Women preachers, women deacons, right? These things are happening, right? That helped me, in addition to having a gay community that was normalizing my existence, right? So all that was a part of it.
As a couple, what have been some of your biggest challenges or your biggest challenge, and how have you overcome that challenge or those challenges together?
Timeliness has been something that because so to give a little context, I tend to be, I don't want to say free spirited, but I tend to live in current modes. So like when something is happening, like not that I'm monotracking, but that's how it comes off. And then that's what can cause disruption, because if I'm somewhere and I say that, hey, I'm gonna be leaving at 6 o'clock, and it's 6:30, I haven't said anything and haven't left already, and then it's 7 o'clock, then is there any regard for how he's feeling about what I said I was gonna do? And so that's been one of the biggest challenges that I think that we've had in this relationship, especially earlier on, because we established like setting up a linked calendar, because in our first year we both had people that were pulling us and wanting to do things all the time. And so what we found as a solution was, let's share a calendar, so we both have access and visibility to be like, okay, so this event's going on for you, this event's going on for me. And if there's like an overlap, then we talk about it so we can mitigate, or we can figure out like which event do we want to go to. Because sometimes they're happening at the exact same time. And then that has like relieved a lot of the friction that started early on in our relationship. And then like I said, just like having those I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
The timeliness,
Thank
timing
you.
conflict.
And so with the timeliness, it's important for us to have those dialogues of like, hey, I'm running late, or hey, this is happening, or this sort of thing is going on. This has been something that was added, because it's been more frequent for me for that to occur than him. And so we've used this in our couples therapy dialogues as like a talking point and action items for us to work on, because it's something that I think that it can seem small when it's happening and when you're doing it, but then like that carries into like how I made him feel, how I'm gonna feel about the way I made him feel, and all those sorts of things. And it's like the last thing that I want to do is to make my husband upset. Because like, I love this man too much to, want to see him just like, and then we don't want to do like the whole like passive aggressions and all those sorts of things. And then like you can feel when the energy is off, just in general, like not even just like, not saying that it's all him, like, because it's definitely, energy is something that's always, it can be created and never destroyed. So even if you feel like, okay, this is one thing and it's uncommon, but you still should either prepare your spouse or have better ways of communicating when something is happening, so you can either put them at ease, or just letting them know what's going on. Because if they just don't know, then, because if they don't hear from you, then they could also think something happened on your way home or whatever. And there's just like so many things to navigate that. And I'll stop taking up the air. Sorry.
Well, I think that's with the foundation. So one of our issues as well was financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, financial. Honestly, quite honestly, both of us had a lot of debt. And I think, beyond that, right? So for his thing, it was the timing. And for me, it was trying to figure out the debt and like, both of our mothers, you know, have had the ability to retire or at the retirement stage, but they haven't been able to, right? And so figuring out how to break generational barriers and obstacles,
Yeah.
that's been something, right? And then so what does that look like for both of us, right? Right. And so we got a financial planner. That was one way we worked on the financial piece of this, right? And it wasn't hey, I'm going to try to sell you something financial planner, right? Which is meaning everything I tell you is really going to center around you buying a policy from me. We got a certified financial planner that was a fiduciary. And I think that was important. Because, finances is a huge piece of this, right? Because it stops so much of what you're doing. But I think the foundation of how we work through it and how we even get to the point to talk about financial planning, talking about couples therapy, early on in our relationship, we were at another friend's event. It was like a reality show watch party. And neither of us watched the reality show. We just were spending time. We came to this event. A gentleman walked in to our friend's house. His name was Chris. And Chris came in, and Chris was like, he was a firecracker. He came in huffing and puffing. He said, man, I can't. And me and Vince, again, are only about this point, 3 or 4 months into the relationship.
Yeah.
He came in and he was like huffing at his husband who wasn't there. He said, man, I'm done with this dude. I'm tired of this dude. I'm like, this dude, this and that. And we don't know him from anyone, but he's going off on his husband. And, he's talking to our friend who's hosting. He said, what happened? He don't want to bring me this. He didn't bring me. He was supposed to come and do this. And he didn't do X, Y, and Z. And so me and Vince are kind of like, this is a shame. Like, we're about to see a breakup here of a relationship, and then Chris took a breath, sat down, and he said, we'll be all right tomorrow. And said it like it was so nonchalant. And so, of course, during that night, we kind of work our way like, hey man, this is Vince and Derrick. And, like what was all that? He said, well, really, I told him at the last minute, I wanted him to drive, but I told him at the last minute and he couldn't make it, and so I was upset. But I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna fix him some breakfast. And it was like he needed to vent, which is what he did, right? But then the main stay was that we'll be all right tomorrow. So, he's now passed away, unfortunately. And we only met his husband at his memorial. So we had never met his husband previously. But the foundation of what we started saying to each other from 2018 till now is, we have a lot of issues. We'll be all right tomorrow. Everything, man, Vince, you were late today. We'll be all right tomorrow. Derrick, you kind of talk to this person, roughly, which sometimes happens. I wish I could say I'm the tenderhearted person of the group. I am not. And so we'll do that, and then we'll have that, and then we'll say, well, we'll be all right tomorrow. And when you have that type of through line, that gives you confidence in your relationship, so that not every argument is an end, right?
Yeah.
And and I'm talking about, we've seen some friends break up. It seems like over, and it's like, well, what the world? But if you keep telling yourselves, right, we'll be all right tomorrow, then that gives you the hope that you need to work through the night so you can get to tomorrow.
Right.
That's right.
And that's what that means.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, it's like, we're never causing any physical or mental or emotional harm to each other when we're having these discussions. And so, just also want to make sure that, like, if there's something more going on, then obviously you need to make an informed decision. But like for most cases and that's in which we're discussing, like if we have a disagreement about something, we're not like exactly like Derrick just said, it is not the ender. It is two people that have a different perspective on something, and then y'all need to work it out. Just like the teachers would say, y'all two over there,
right?
Y'all sit down and work this out. Like,
right.
So
we did something different in the South. I wouldn't recommend that to put them in a room together and say, all right. And the last part I'll add on that is we have searched for and found other gay couples, right? That is so important that you find black gay couples, especially because there's a duality we have to walk. But that have become mentor couples, right? Or, sibling couples, because some of them are our era. And literally we'll do a double date, right? A double date, and we'll, just talk, because if you're a couple and you're constantly hanging around, and listening to friends who are not, then unfortunately, what are you feeding your relationship, right? But if you're hanging with people who are in the same goal as you, right, in their relationship, then that iron is going to sharpen that iron, and both of you are going to come out, much better from this. And so it's important that we find those couples and we connect those couples. And unfortunately, a lot of times when you're a couple, in a black gay couple especially, you take your man and you run. You retire from the scene, right? In the DMV, you move to these upper and low, these outer places, and you're like, suburbs. Yeah, and you're like, I don't go down. And we try to make sure we connect with them, and then we kind of feed into each other, because we have some long-term couples who, when they talk to us, they get fed, right? So it's not like it's a one-way thing where they're telling us what to do. Sometimes they've been together so long, they need to hear what it's like and remember, right? That it'll be okay tomorrow.
It'll be okay tomorrow. That's the title of a sermon. It'll be okay tomorrow. So we end these conversations with a Joseph Beam quote, which is, "Black men loving Black men is the revolutionary act." So Derrick and Vincent, what makes Black men loving Black men so revolutionary?
For one, I think that it is beautiful to see. I think that, Black men have so much that we endure, but we're also so magnificent. We're so often misunderstood. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to do many great things together. And I just think that it's an extraordinary thing that I'm glad that I'm a part of. I'm a part of, Black gay love, and have been for over 6 years now, and married for now over 2 months, 2.5 months now. And so, we're still in our honeymoon of marriage, but we've been working on this together intentionally. And I just think that it's awesome when we see it. We need to see more of it. It's so important for the community to know that long-term relationships are possible, and they take a lot of intentionality and introspection, and for people to really understand that it's a lot of work that we individually need to do too, because we deal with so much, people at work and people with our family, and just people who don't even know us at all, may say or say certain things or do certain things that will impede, our intentional success that we're aiming for. But as they would say in the church that I'm now also proud to be a part of, God is able to do incredible things, and Black men together, we're in an unstoppable force.
History. I'm a former history teacher, and I know that in this country, being a Black man is to be, many times the target and I guess the persona of fear, right? You're the target for people who, want to feel superior, but you're also the person that they make into the fear, into the boogeyman. And so we have always had these issues. And so we were never taught to love. Not even straight Black men were taught to love. You were considered to be an asset when we were slaves, right? You were considered to be an asset. You couldn't marry, right? You literally, you could be at one place one day, sold off the next day, breeded, to women at the plantation, right? So you were never taught to love anyone, including yourself. So to then not only work through that through the generations, but then to now be able to love yourself and another man, if that's who you love, right? You are going against hundreds of years of history here. And every day you do that, right? You are creating a legacy that's going to outshine that entire history, right? Because every time we hug, every time we kiss, there is somebody there that's a generational curse is being broken in them. Even if they're not gay, it may be something else going on, but they see that somebody's working against this thing, and we can do it too, and that's important. So legacy, that's that. Out of that revolution, we're going to get the legacy out of this.